Subscribe.
Our good friend Chad Brendel, BearcatJournal.com, joins us. Just 1 second. We had some of you wanting to try to clarify the Thanksgiving weekend schedule in the Big 12 because of what we've been discussing with Brett Yormark, and we'll get Chad's opinion on that too. Craig?
Yeah, there's only one Thanksgiving college football game this year. It's the Egg Bowl. It's Ole Miss and Mississippi State in Starkville on Thanksgiving night. But as we reiterated with Texas Tech and Texas, that's a Black Friday game, and there's a loaded Black Friday slate of games. Iowa, Nebraska. You've got TCU, Oklahoma in Norman. Texas Tech and Texas will be a 7:30 kickoff that night in Austin. Oregon State, Oregon, Civil War, last of the Pac-12, will start an hour later. That'll be the late kickoff on Fox. Missouri, Arkansas. Penn State, Michigan State. Those are all Black Friday games. So that's going to be like 10-plus games on that day, and two huge ones in the Big 12, and now one that's got a bit more fire brewing with Texas Tech and Texas, thanks to the commissioner.
All right, we're joined by Chad Brendel, BearcatJournal.com. Chad, I don't know, it's all over the place. Brett Yormark's in Lubbock. He said he hopes Joey McGuire takes care of the business like he did against Texas in Lubbock and Austin. Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and all hell's breaking loose. People's opinions are going all over the place. As an incoming Big 12 team, how do you feel about that, or program?
I'm just glad that Cincinnati's not going to take their what seemed like annual trip to East Carolina for Friday night, Black Friday. So I don't like they can, you guys fight about whatever you guys fight about. We'll just be happy that we don't have to go to Greenville.
It's a good way of looking at it.
It's a great way to look at it. What are your thoughts about Yormark? And, of course, Bowlesby's the one that added the 4 immediately. And then we've seen recently, since the last time we spoke with you, 4 others coming from the Pac-12. Your thoughts about all of that?
I don't think we've ever seen a commissioner like him. I mean, he is direct. He seems to be able to get the job done on what he sets his sights on. He's confident. Like normally commissioners are kind of, talk out of both sides of their mouth, and they're trying to keep everybody happy and keep the peace. I love having a guy that mixes things up. If you follow me on Twitter, I'm not afraid to mix things up. So I kind of like his style.
Chad, with the season now looming here, what are your thoughts on Emory Jones as starting quarterback? And do you see improvement at that position this year versus what Ben Bryant did? What's just sort of the expectation you have now for QB and Emory Jones in particular?
Well, clearly it's a lot different. Ben was a pocket guy in a pretty straightforward, pro-style offense. This is more read option, zone option. You get the quarterback out, out of the pocket a lot more. Let the quarterback run, more like Desmond Ridder was kind of asked to do. So it's different. There's been significant improvement from the spring. Some of that is Emory Jones getting better. Some of that is adding some significant talent to the wide receiver room. I know I've talked about this with you guys before, but there's one scholarship wide receiver remaining from last year. And in the spring, it was like, oh, this is going to be a problem. And they've brought in 4 or 5 guys now. When you look at Cincinnati's wide receiver room, you feel like it's 6, 7, maybe even 8 deep with quality guys. And that's made Emory Jones obviously look a lot better. They've settled in at running back with Miles Montgomery and Corey Kiner, kind of being the 2 backs that are going to be featured. So going into camp, I mean, this is a really good Cincinnati defense, and the offense held their own in camp. Now, there weren't really any days where you felt like, the offense dominated, but they didn't get pushed around, which was a fear after they got their butts kicked in the spring. So we've seen significant improvement there. What does that mean on Saturdays? That's yet to be determined.
Chad Brendel with us, Cincinnati Bearcat Journal. So at the beginning when Fickle leaves, it was obviously a shock to the system. Here comes Satterfield. We had a chance to visit with him at Big 12 Media Days. Has anything, the opinion of him changed, or will that not happen until they lose their first game?
Yeah, I think people have gotten a little bit more comfortable with him and his style and the way that he does things. But, yeah, it's going to come down to winning, and they're used to winning quite a bit here. And this, everybody kind of looks at this as a transition year where making a bowl game is kind of seen as being successful. So I think he'll get a little bit of leash this year, but they expect the defense to be really good. So that's going to kind of be a standard that fans aren't going to really budge on, even though they're playing, more talented offensive units than they have the past couple years. And then, hopefully the offense comes together as the season goes along and finds a rhythm and allows them to be playing better football in October and November than they were in August and September.
Preseason polls are what they are. We're going to forget about them as soon as games kick off for the most part. But when you saw Cincinnati voted to finish 13 out of 14, just above West Virginia, what were your initial thoughts on that?
It didn't really – was I going to feel better if they were voted 10th? Not really.
Do you feel like it was accurate? Or is that kind of the same mindset you have, or do you think that they're being a little bit devalued maybe because people don't know them well enough just yet?
Well, that wouldn't have been the case had Fickle stayed. I think it's fair in that you are looking at a team that is replacing 10 of 11 starters on offense. Mm-hmm. And if I was looking at a team for a preseason poll that was replacing that much, I would say that team's probably going to struggle to win games. So I don't think that it's unrealistic. I think what people didn't do was factor in the schedule, because they missed, if you look at Cincinnati's schedule, they missed 4 of the top 5 teams in the preseason poll. The only team that they get out of that top 5 in the preseason poll is Oklahoma at Nippert Stadium, the first conference game of the year. So they don't get Texas, they don't get TCU, they don't get Kansas State. So when you look at that, there is room there for Cincinnati to maybe win some more games than people expect. But I think if you guys were looking at Baylor and they had 10 of 11 new starters, you'd be like,
You're right.
I get it.
Yep, no question about it. How has joining the Big 12, not that Cincinnati hasn't done well at recruiting and has had talent now in the NFL, how has that in any way or kind of on the barometer of what it's helped with recruiting?
I think because of the staff switch and because of the type of, when you come in December and everything, it used to be December was kind of the start of the next recruiting cycle. And it feels like now everybody's got their classes done by June. So those relationships, it's tough to build in that quick of a window. The recruiting has been about the same at, maybe a little bit of an uptick of, where Fickle had it at the top when they were at the top of the American. So they're hanging out right in the middle of the pack, which I think is probably about right, given, that they're dealing with a new coach and a new staff and an entirely new recruiting department. So when you look at all, you factor in all the things, I think it's about where you would expect it to be. But this was also a pretty weird cycle in that all of a sudden Michigan is back in Ohio. If you followed, Midwest recruiting for any period of time, as Ohio State started to dominate Michigan, Michigan couldn't get kids out of Ohio. So they kind of stopped recruiting Ohio. Now that they've beaten Michigan, they're beating Ohio State twice in a row. Jim Harbaugh's like, hey, let's go get some Ohio kids again. And Ohio State and Michigan have pretty much, dominated the top 10 in the state, which is a spot where Ohio State was getting theirs. And then Cincinnati was picking up a pretty good number of the top 10 to 15 kids that didn't go to Ohio State. We didn't see that in this class because Michigan kind of jumped back in. It'll be interesting to see, if that trend continues, or if Cincinnati can, as this staff gets comfortable, can kind of regain that spot as the secondary option for the kids that don't go to Ohio State.
Chad, so you mentioned getting into it with Twitter. I've been known on occasion to do that, not quite as much as lately, but It's interesting, man. When you have opinions, they have opinions, and you run a site. It's a message board. You cover the heck out of it. You do your due diligence. How often do you want to just walk away? How hard is it sometimes just to walk away?
I've gotten better at it as I've gotten older. You guys know I went through a lot of life changes over the past year, and it kind of makes you like you care less about the arguing on Twitter. It doesn't get the motor running like it used to. It's gotten easier to walk away, but sometimes it's fun to just kind of go back and forth. And that's the thing. A lot of people get mad. Like, I'm always generally laughing when that stuff is going on because I find it entertaining. I find it funny. A lot of people take that stuff way too personally. Like, it's sports on the internet. Just relax and take a deep breath.
Great point. Everyone's shaking their head at you for me. To know that a little bit.
Shaking in agreement, yes, very much so, yeah.
There's a guy, John McClain, he's a Hall of Fame columnist. He's worked in Houston for years. He went to Baylor. And he has like 150,000 followers, and he has a massive following from when he covered the NFL. He's semi-retired but continues to write. He told me one time, I asked him about how does he respond to anybody who might check him or whatever, and you know what he did? And I should have listened to him along. He said he's never looked at the responses. And I was like, damn, that's smart to do. But I just kind of feel like we should engage with our audience, whoever it might be. But he actually just doesn't respond or look at any of the comments.
I don't have that type of self-control. So I do.
Yeah, neither do I. Neither do I.
I don't have that type of self-control. I've always had kind of a big personality, and I've always liked to talk and debate and argue sports. My dad would take me to Reds games as a little kid, and the people in front of us would be saying stuff that's wrong. And I'd be like, what do you mean that guy's hitting 327 with a 400 on base percentage? Like, what do you mean take the bat out of his hand? And my dad would just look and smile, and these guys would turn and argue with me. And I was like 7. So this has been me my whole life. I couldn't change it if I wanted to, I don't think.
Yeah, it'd be hard. You're right. Thank you so much, buddy. Appreciate your time. And we'll see you down the road when Baylor and Cincinnati, and even before that, they hook up.
Anytime you need me, I'm always happy to come on. Appreciate you guys.
Chad Brendel, again, Bearcat Journal 247 Sports. Love that guy's attitude. Enjoy watching him and following him on Twitter, and also his thoughts about Cincinnati football.
Yeah, you should listen.